Imagine you have just 6 weeks to prepare for a major martial arts tournament.
Which is, not a lot of time at all.
Right, it's super compressed. And you need to build unstoppable stamina.
Mm.
So when you walk into the gym for your conditioning block, you're faced with this choice. Do you spend your time kicking a heavy bag as fast as humanly possible? Or do you head out to the track and run wind sprints?
Yeah, and I mean, intuition practically screams at you to practice your kicks, right? Like you want to be a better kicker, so obviously you should kick.
Exactly. But, well, it's a fascinating piece of new scientific literature reveals that this deeply ingrained intuition might be completely sabotaging your cardiovascular engine.
It's a really wild finding.
It is. So welcome to this deep dive where we are dissecting a rigorously designed study. It's titled A Comparative Analysis of High-Intensity Technique-Specific Intervals and Short Sprint Interval Training in Taekwondo Athletes, Effects on Cardiorespiratory Fitness and Anaerobic Power.
That is quite the title.
Yeah, academics love a long title. This research was authored by Yuan and Mohsen Sheykhlouvand, and it was published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine in 2024.
And the design of this experiment is incredibly compelling because it tackles a debate that plagues, well, almost every single sport, not just martial arts.
Right.
We are constantly trying to isolate that boundary between refining a physical skill and expanding raw physiological capacity. And the authors here, they didn't just theorize. They subjected elite athletes to a punishing protocol to measure the exact biological fallout of both approaches.
And so our mission for you today is to explore the physiological adaptations of these two distinct high-intensity interval training, or HIIT methods. We're going to look under the hood of human performance to determine which method is scientifically superior for athletes who require both elite technical skill and a massive aerobic engine.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. So understand the gravity of the training protocols. We first really need to establish the unique metabolic environment of Taekwondo.
Yeah, looking at the physiological charts I actually have pulled up on the screen behind me, the metabolic demands of this sport create just the perfect laboratory for this research.
How so?
Well, Taekwondo is defined by extreme intermittency. A typical match involves a work-to-rest ratio ranging anywhere from like 1.2 to 1.7.
Okay, so translating that into what you actually see on the mat, that's like 1 second of absolute explosive violent effort, just a total flurry of strikes.
Yeah.
And that's followed immediately by 2 to 7 seconds of bouncing, circling, and basically trying to get hit.
Exactly. And during that single second of explosive striking, the athlete's body relies almost exclusively on anaerobic power.
Right, the system without oxygen.
Yeah, the anaerobic energy system operates without oxygen. It's capable of generating massive immediate mechanical force by rapidly breaking down stored energy in the muscles. But the biological cost of that rapid energy synthesis is a flood of metabolic byproducts, most notably hydrogen ions and lactate.
Oh, man. That is the infamous burn, like the sensation of your legs suddenly feeling like they're filled with wet cement after throwing a combination.
That's exactly it. You need immense local muscular fitness to tolerate that acidic environment and continue generating force. But, the hidden mechanism of combat sports actually lies in those 2 to 7 seconds of bouncing and circling.
The rest periods.
Right, those brief lulls. Because during those lulls, the aerobic system, the oxygen-dependent energy pathway, it takes over. Your aerobic fitness acts as like a biological vacuum cleaner.
Vacuum cleaner, I like that.
Yeah, it's the engine responsible for clearing those acidic waste products out of the local tissue, metabolizing the lactate, and reloading the muscle fibers with fresh ATP for the next explosive burst.
Meaning, okay, if your aerobic engine is undersized, your first few kicks in round 1 might be lightning fast. But by the middle of round 2, your body simply cannot clear the waste during the lulls.
Right, you just redlined.
Yeah, you end up moving underwater because your biological vacuum cleaner is clogged.
Exactly. Higher levels of aerobic capacity are absolutely non-negotiable if an athlete wants to maintain peak power output across multiple rounds. The central cardiovascular system dictates the speed of that interbout recovery.
So knowing why the sport is metabolically demanding naturally shifts our focus to how we build that engine. And high-intensity interval training has effectively taken over the sports science world as the gold standard for this exact problem.
Oh, absolutely. It induces remarkable skeletal muscle and cardiorespiratory adaptations in a highly compressed time frame.
Right.
HIIT essentially mimics the cellular stress of traditional long-duration endurance training, but condenses it. For combat athletes who already spend, countless hours on the mat refining their timing, distance, and tactics, condensing their conditioning into short, brutal blocks is just a logistical necessity.
You just don't have time to run 10 miles a day.
No, not at all.
So the core dilemma investigated by Song and Sheykhlouvand is the specific flavor of HIIT you should choose. They essentially pitted two methodologies against each other.
Right, the specific versus the general.
Exactly. One is technique-specific, HIIT, referred to in the data as HIIs. This involves performing the intervals using the actual movements of the sport. So, picture repeated, maximal effort kicking on a customized target.
Yeah, very sport-specific.
And then the opponent in this study is repeated sprint, HIT or HIT. And this abandons the sport entirely in favor of raw, straight-line running sprints.
Kicking a target versus sprinting down a track.
Yeah. To put this in perspective for someone outside the martial arts world, is this like a musician trying to increase their playing speed by exclusively practicing a highly complex guitar solo at double speed versus, I don't know, setting the guitar down and just doing raw, mechanical, finger-strengthening exercises on a spring-loaded grip trainer.
That analogy captures the tension perfectly. You're highlighting the principle of training specificity.
Right.
In academic sports science, there has historically been a strong bias toward specificity. The logic dictates that conditioning should closely mimic the biomechanical demands of competition. Yeah, technique-specific training, like the fast guitar solo or the repeated kicks, it feels like a biological two-for-one deal. You're theoretically forcing the cardiovascular system to adapt while simultaneously grooving the neurological pathways required for your sport.
Yeah, why build an engine outside the car when you can build it while driving? It makes complete intuitive sense.
It does. But the purpose of this rigorous experimental design is to test if that intuition actually survives real physiological measurement. Does the sheer complexity of performing a sport-specific movement at high speeds interfere with the body's ability to push the cardiovascular system to its absolute biological limit?
Wow. Okay, to answer that, we have to step inside a laboratory and look at the brutal 6-week protocol they engineered. They recruited 30 provincial-level male Taekwondo athletes.
Which is key because these are highly trained, adapted competitors, not novices experiencing, like, newbie games.
Right. That completely changes the baseline. So they were divided into 3 cohorts: a running sprint group, a kicking sprint group, and a control group.
And the baseline training was identical across all groups. They all completed their standard 60-minute Taekwondo practices 3 times a week. Sparring, tactical drills, all the usual technical refinement.
But immediately following that 60-minute session, the 2 experimental groups endured their respective HIIT interventions. And the parameters they set are just staggering. They demanded 3 sets of 10 repetitions.
It's brutal.
Yeah. A single repetition consisted of a 4-second all-out maximal effort, followed by a mere 15 seconds of passive recovery. And they were allowed just 1 minute of rest between the sets.
Yeah, doing the math on that protocol reveals a terrifying metabolic demand. The running group is executing 4 seconds of absolute maximum sprinting, resting for 15 seconds while their heart rate is still completely redlined, and repeating that 10 times in a row.
And the kicking group is doing the same thing.
Right. The kicking group operates on the exact same timer, but they're delivering maximum power kicks to a specialized target, alternating legs.
Unbelievable. So, to capture the physiological fallout of this 6-week gauntlet, the researchers deployed an extensive testing battery. They utilized graded exercise tests on a treadmill to find true VO2 max.
Standard, but effective.
Yeah, and they measured impedance cardiography, which sounds like science fiction, but it involves running a highly calibrated, totally painless electrical current through the athlete's chest.
Yeah, it's a fascinating technique. Because blood conducts electricity, measuring the changing resistance allows scientists to calculate stroke volume and cardiac output. They're literally measuring the physical volume of blood the left ventricle ejects with every single beat.
That's incredible.
It is. And they paired those central cardiovascular measurements with peripheral performance tests. So upper body Wingate tests for peak anaerobic power, squat jumps, and counter movement jumps to measure lower body explosiveness. They also used 20-meter linear speed sprints and a highly specific protocol called the Taekwondo Specific Agility Test, or TSAT.
Okay, wait. I have to jump in here on behalf of anyone who's ever tried to pace themselves during a terrible workout.
Oh, sure.
If the kicking group is doing 4 seconds of all-out kicks on a bag, and the running group is sprinting down a track, how do the researchers objectively know the athletes are actually going all out?
That's a big question.
Right. because running speed is easy to verify with a stopwatch. But kicking a stationary target, how do we know the kicking group wasn't subconsciously holding back like 5% of their effort to survive the 30 repetitions?
Yeah, it's a vital methodological hurdle. You cannot simply trust athletes to self-regulate intensity during a study on maximum capacity. To control this, the researchers utilized the Borg rating of perceived exertion scale, specifically the 0 to 10 format.
Okay.
After the training sessions, they meticulously recorded these RPE scores. The running group reported an average perceived exertion of 9.11. The kicking group reported an average of 8.95.
Wow. So neurologically, both groups are hovering right at a 9 out of 10. And biologically, a 9 means your vision is narrowing and your body's basically begging you to stop moving.
Exactly. From a subjective, central nervous system perspective, both cohorts were operating at maximal intensity. They were both redlining their effort based entirely on the specific mechanical tasks the researchers assigned to them.
Okay, so with the exertion levels verified, let's look at the data at the end of the 6 weeks. First, the shared victories. It turns out that putting your body through a 9 out of 10 meat grinder works, regardless of the flavor.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Right. Both the kicking and running protocols successfully enhanced peak anaerobic power on the Wingate tests. They both drove measurable increases in vertical jump height, and they both elevated baseline aerobic thresholds, specifically pushing out the first and second ventilatory thresholds.
Yeah, the stimulus was severe enough in both methodologies to force a baseline level of muscular and metabolic adaptation. If you push human physiology that hard, the body will build basic armor to protect itself against future stress.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Once we move past those basic shared adaptations, the data sharply diverges.
And this is the crux of the paper.
Yeah. The running group, the athletes performing raw, non-specific mechanical output, they vastly outperformed the technique-specific kicking group across almost every crucial cardiorespiratory metric.
It wasn't even close.
No.
Yeah.
The running group experienced a 6.4% surge in their VO2 max. The kicking group managed only a 4.6% increase.
And that disparity extended into the precise mechanisms of the heart. The running group demonstrated significantly superior enhancements in O2 pulse, the second ventilatory threshold, and their maximum cardiac output.
Wow.
Their hearts literally became more efficient, powerful pumps.
Hold on, that completely breaks the cardinal rule of sports training.
Yeah.
Specificity is supposed to be everything. Like, if I want to be a faster swimmer, I don't spend 6 weeks rock climbing. And I want to push back on this finding specifically regarding the agility data. The paper states that 20-meter sprint speed and the complex Taekwondo-specific agility test only improved in the running group.
Yes.
But the agility test involves rapid lateral shifts, multidirectional movement, and striking targets. How does running in a straight line make a martial artist better at throwing lateral roundhouse kicks than the group that actually spent 6 weeks throwing kicks?
What's fascinating here is the vital distinction between central and peripheral adaptations.
Okay.
To explain this, imagine a city's power grid. Your heart and lungs are the central nuclear power plant. Your specific leg and hip muscles are the local manufacturing factories.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah, so when you execute a highly technical movement, like a rapid alternating kick, those local factories rely on incredibly intricate machinery. Tiny stabilizing muscles in the hips, neuromuscular sequencing, perfect balance.
And as you get deeper into the 30 intervals, that local machinery starts to break down. Your footwork gets a millimeter off. Your hip flexor fatigues.
Precisely. The local factory jams. It experiences peripheral fatigue. And because the local machinery is jamming, it stops pulling electricity from the central power plant.
Ah.
Your technique fails before your heart and lungs are ever forced to operate at 100% capacity. Because the nuclear power plant is never pushed to its absolute limit, the city planners never receive the signal to upgrade the turbines.
But when you sprint down a track, there is no complex machinery to jam.
Exactly. Sprinting is a deeply ingrained, gross biomechanical pattern. It recruits a massive percentage of your overall muscle mass. Your glutes, hamstrings, core, and arms are all firing synergistically.
So the local factories are just huge and simple.
Yes, those local factories are enormous and structurally simple. They don't jam easily. They just keep demanding massive amounts of electricity. This immense mechanical stress forces the central cardiovascular system to adapt drastically just to keep up with the demand. This is precisely why impedance cardiography showed such superior increases in stroke volume in the running group. The left ventricle was forced to stretch, strengthen, and pump more blood per beat.
And when it comes time to perform that complex Taekwondo-specific agility test, the running group walks in with a massively upgraded central power plant.
Exactly.
Even though they didn't practice the lateral movements during their conditioning, their newly upgraded heart delivers oxygen to the working muscles so efficiently that they simply perform the complex skill better, longer, and faster. The raw horsepower overcomes the lack of specific practice.
Yeah, a vastly superior engine elevates the performance of the entire vehicle, regardless of how complex the steering mechanism is.
That is wild. And this brings us to a section of the data that might be the most consequential for anyone listening who designs their own workouts.
Oh, for sure.
Because the researchers didn't stop at group averages. They pulled apart the data to look at how individual, specific athletes responded, or, failed to respond entirely, to the stress. There's a massive mystery in the charts regarding the so-called non-responder.
Yeah, averages can easily hide individual failures. In elite sports science, we utilize a strict statistical parameter called the two-technical error threshold. This is designed to separate statistical noise from genuine biological adaptation.
Meaning, if an athlete's VO2 max goes up by a fraction of a percent, it could just be because the room was cooler that day, or they slept an extra hour, or the calibration on the breathing mask drifted slightly.
Right, there are a million variables.
But if the improvement clears this specific two-technical error threshold, it proves that a permanent structural change occurred inside their body.
It guarantees we are looking at real physiological evolution, and when they applied this threshold, the statistics were glaring. Within the running group, the positive response rate was near absolute. For VO2 max specifically, there were 0% non-responders.
0%.
Every single athlete who sprinted built a measurably bigger engine.
But the data for the technique-specific kicking group looks like a scattered mess. Depending on which cardiorespiratory variable the researchers measured, the non-responder rate fluctuated wildly from 20% all the way up to an astonishing 100%.
It's incredible to see on the charts.
Yeah. Looking just at VO2 max, 40% of the athletes in the kicking group were categorized as non-responders. They endured 6 grueling weeks of max effort intervals, pushing themselves to a 9 out of 10 on the exertion scale, and their aerobic engines simply did not grow.
Nothing.
So what does this all mean? If we verify they were trying just as hard, why did biology ignore almost half the room? Did their bodies just fail?
No, their bodies functioned perfectly. They were simply constrained by their own skill. This data illuminates a profound reality about human physiology. As we discussed with the power grid analogy, kicking has a technical ceiling. If an athlete has even a slight biomechanical inefficiency, maybe their hip rotation is suboptimal, or their ankle stability wavers under fatigue, their central nervous system will forcibly throttle their output to prevent injury.
Wow, so they hit a neurological speed limit before they can hit a cardiovascular speed limit.
Yes. And because that technical ceiling varies wildly from person per person based on their unique skill level and anatomy, the physiological adaptation across the group is wildly inconsistent.
That makes so much sense.
Running obliterates that technical ceiling. Because it relies on fundamental mechanical output, sprinting acts as a universal physiological equalizer. It guarantees that almost any human being, regardless of their specific sporting background, can safely force their cardiovascular system to reach maximum capacity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely reframes the concept of athletic plateaus. The authors specifically reference foundational work by the physiologist Claude Bouchard, dealing with adverse metabolic responses to exercise.
Yeah, it's classic research.
Historically, there has been a fatalistic idea that some individuals are just genetic non-responders to cardiovascular training.
Right, but the crucial takeaway from this deep dive is that the genetic non-responder is largely a myth. When an athlete strictly follows a protocol and fails to adapt, their biology is not broken. They are simply married to the wrong stimulus.
They're pressing a gas pedal that isn't connected to the engine they're trying to build.
Precisely. When an individual plateaus using highly specific, skill-based conditioning, the solution isn't to push harder against the technical ceiling. The solution is to change the modality.
Ditch the heavy bag.
Yeah. Shifting away from complex movement and toward broad, high-output mechanical stress like sprinting removes the technical bottleneck, allowing the central engine to finally receive the overload signal it requires to grow.
So, to synthesize the academic findings of Song and Sheykhlouvand for you today, While sport-specific interval training remains an undeniably vital tool for developing acute technical skills under the duress of fatigue, the empirical data strongly suggest that pure cardiorespiratory engine building requires fundamental, high-output mechanical stress.
Absolutely.
Sprinting recruits more overall muscle mass, systematically bypasses technical fatigue ceilings, and results in significantly greater and remarkably more consistent physiological adaptations across a diverse athletic population.
The science is clear on this. You must systematically separate the acquisition of physical skill from the pursuit of pure physiological overload if you want to maximize the potential of both.
And, this principle raises an important question that extends far beyond the realm of physical sports. It makes you wonder how this mechanism applies to cognitive work or learning a complex language or building a career.
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
Right. Like, are we hitting plateaus in our intellectual endurance? Not because we lack raw intelligence, but because we are stubbornly using highly complex, skill-specific tasks to try and build our mental stamina instead of stepping back and training the underlying cognitive engine with fundamental focus exercises.
Yeah, maybe we all just need to go for a mental sprint.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
something profound to think about the next time you hit a wall, whether it's physical or mental.
Definitely.
Well, we strongly encourage you to read the full article published in the Journal of Sports Science and Medicine to view the individual response charts for yourself.
Yeah, seeing the visual disparity between the responders and non-responders grounds the data in a very tangible way. It's really worth a look.
It is. And remember to follow the channel and turn on notifications for more scientifically rigorous, accessible deep dives into the mechanisms of human performance.